Hello, Becky here. Welcome to or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing the best books of 2023. Now, I just went through my Storygraph and looked at all the books I've read this year and wrote down my best books, my favorite books. These are in no particular order. I just wrote them down from the beginning of the year to the end of the year of what I have read. I am planning on reading at least one more book before the end of the year. Today is December 23rd, so I do have plans for one more book to read at least, but I'm not anticipating anything else coming up on this list. So this is my favorite books. So I'm going to start with what I read in January for the buzzword, which was Life or Death, and I read The Bookish Life of Nina Hill. Now, is this actually a 5-star stick with you best book of all time kind of book? No. But while I was reading it, I had such a good time with it, and it was just so much fun. So The Bookish Life of Nina Hill is exactly what it sounds like, and it is just Nina Hill living her best bookish life. She works at a bookstore. She does trivia nights like every Thursday night. She lives by her lists kind of thing. I love her because she really cares about her me time. It is important to her. And she schedules it in the calendar. And people are like, hey, are you busy, Wednesday evening? I would like to take you out. And she says, no, I'm busy that day. And she's literally going home to read a book. And she doesn't need an excuse. Like, she doesn't have to be out and about doing something keeping her busy. She's just like, no, that's my time and it's precious to me. And I love that. There's a little bit of a romance in this. It's not really a great romance. I wouldn't recommend it as a romance, but there is a little bit of a romance in there. And there's also some Friends references, and she even at one point thinks to herself, what am I going to say next? Gum would be perfection. And that is such like a niche Friends reference, and I just loved it. So I ate that up. I really enjoyed that book. And it was one of the first books I read this year. I also read, for, again, the buzzword, The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. And this is a very cozy fantasy witchy book about this girl named Mika, and they live in a world where there are witches, but they're secret. People aren't supposed to know about witches because they take advantage of them. And it's not so much like they're burning them at the stake, it's more like, how can I use your powers to benefit myself? So they are part of this secret society, and there happens to be 3 young witches living together, and witches are not supposed to be gathered together for long periods of time because their magic can become too powerful and wreak havoc on the world. So there happens to be these 3 young girls living together that are orphans, because that is a thing when you are a witch, you lose your parents quite young and become orphans. And these 3 have been gathered from different places in the world and put into this home that this one witch kind of rescues these children. And they're in this home, and she's off traveling the world and doing archaeology type things. So the found family in this story who live at the home, one is like the groundskeeper, the gardener person, one is there to look after the children, and there's like a cook, housekeeper kind of person. And they're looking for somebody to come in and be basically a nanny to these 3 witches and teach them what it means to be a witch and how to do witchy things. So they find Mika and call her in, and they're like, can you please help us? And she's like, I'm not really a witch, because she's on social media as like a pretend witch, but she's actually a witch. And they're like, no, you're a witch. We know you're a witch. We can tell because we live with 3 witches. And it is found family, and I've discovered that I love found family. I just love that trope so much. And it's cozy, and it's light fantasy in the sense that it's just, they live in the real world, but they're witches and have magic that they use, but it's not this crazy, difficult, fantastical world that we have to learn about with all these different like politics and rules and stuff like that. It's just the regular world. I love the little witches, the little girls in it and everything, and the found family aspect of it is just wonderful. There is a romance in this one as well, and it was delightful, and I really, really enjoyed it. I also read Watch Us Rise, which is a YA novel about a black girl and a white girl, and they form a club at school, and it's all about feminism and having women's voices heard within the school and elsewhere, of course, but especially within the school. And I just really liked the messages within it. I think it's a really great starting point for talks about feminism and women's rights and all of that stuff, like social justice type things. I think it's a really great starting point because it is YA, but you also have the passion of teenagers. And I think that's a great thing about teenagers is sometimes as we get older, we get a little bit cynical and we think like, oh, they're just too optimistic or whatever. And they kind of are, and that's kind of great. And what's amazing about teenagers and the youth. And we need more of that in the world and their optimism. And it's very black and white thinking, and there does need to be maturity that happens as we go older and realizing the shades of gray that we do live within. But I really enjoy just the passion that these young women show and the conversations that are had there. The black girl is also plus size as well, and there's some discussions around body image, and the white girl is quite your typical like skinny, conventionally attractive person, and she doesn't see the struggles that her black friend has being black and plus size. So there's a little bit of a blinding there of like, yeah, you're my friend and I love you no matter what size you are, but she also doesn't see the challenges that her friend goes through living in the body that she lives in. And I thought it was really great and some really great discussions, and I love that. And I love a book that brings up tough topics, and being YA, it was easy for my brain to comprehend everything that was going on and to understand and delve into this topic. So I really, really enjoyed that one. I also finished up the Grant County series by Karen Slaughter this year with Beyond Reach, and that book, I can't even tell you the specifics of that book. There's 6 books in the series and this is the last one, and I really enjoyed following this detective Jeffrey and his ex-wife slash wife. Her name is, I can't even remember right now, Sarah, and she is the town's pediatrician and coroner, and he is the chief of police. And I really like stories like that, but this last book was devastating. I can't believe Karen Slaughter did that to me, to us, to the fans of this series. Like, I can't believe she did that. Like, it's just absolutely the most heartbreaking book I think I've read this year, and just I can't believe she ended it like that. And I have not read any other Karen Slaughter books, and I really look forward to getting into more of them, hopefully in 2024. Let me know if there's any that you think I should read. Her books are very hard to read. They're very graphic and violent in nature, but I really like them. I think I have Pieces of Her on my shelf, so I'll probably read that one next, but I can't even remember everything that happens in that book, but just the way it ended was just so heartbreaking and devastating. So watch out for that if you read the Grant County series. I also read Riley Sager's Lock Every Door this year, and really enjoyed it. Actually, it had a twist in it that I wasn't expecting. I've read a few of his books now so far. I have not read all of them. I am missing a couple of them that I hope I can catch up on and read like his whole backlog. But yeah, Lock Every Door, it was a great thriller and mystery, and I really had a good time with it. I also read The Only One Left by Riley Sager this year for the Literally Dead book club, and I think the book troupe also did that. Lock Every Door is about an apartment sitter. She gets this job at this really uptown apartment in downtown New York that is very famous but secretive, and no one really knows what goes on in there, and just like really rich famous people live in there. But sometimes there is an apartment that is unoccupied for whatever reason and they need an apartment sitter in there, and there's lots of rules that are kind of questionable and you don't really understand, but you're like, well, I'm getting paid a good chunk of money to be here, so I'm just gonna follow these rules anyways and hope for the best. And there's some mysterious things happening. She is trying to make friends with another apartment sitter, and then that person kind of ghosts and like disappears, and you're like, what happened to her? And she's trying to find out what happened to her. Why would she just leave all of a sudden? She needs the money just as much as I need the money. And then there's another male apartment sitter there that is very quiet and like, I don't want to talk to you kind of thing, leave me out of it. Yeah, just very mysterious, and what is actually happening on inside that apartment is not something I would have ever considered or thought about. So it was really interesting and it was different, and I enjoyed that a lot. The Only One Left is about this girl who murdered, or supposedly allegedly murdered, her entire family and ended up having a stroke or seizure or some kind of thing that left her incapable of speech or really much movement or anything like that. Like, she's kind of paralyzed, and this happened in the 20s or 30s or something. The murder happened, and now it's like the 80s, and she is elderly and needs a caregiver. And this woman, who is just getting back into her job as a caregiver after taking some time off and having like a leave of absence type thing after her last patient died, is put into this job to be the caregiver for this elderly woman. And this woman, she can move a little bit and says, I want to tell you my story. And the caregiver gets her a typewriter, I can't remember names apparently, and is like, okay, here, type out the story, tell me what's going on. And you're just progressing through the story. I thought the atmosphere of the home that they are on, it's literally like on a cliff that's like collapsing into the ocean. That atmosphere is pretty good, but I don't get a lot of like 80s vibes from it. Besides the fact that she's on a typewriter, not a computer, the fact that they don't have cell phones plays a little bit of a part, but I don't really feel that strong 80s vibe if that's what you are looking for. But it is very much Riley Sager, and everything at the end goes absolutely crazy. And there is a twist in this that a lot of people probably can't see coming, but I was listening to it as an audiobook, and when the twist is revealed, I was shaken and I was like, what? And I had to pause it and go back through all the information I'd gotten up until that point and be like, wait, this is what actually happened now that we get this little bit of extra information. So I thought it was really good, and it surprised me as well. So Riley Sager is really good at the high action packed mystery thrillers, and I've really enjoyed his writing. And Lock Every Door and The Only One Left were the two that I read this year that I really enjoyed. I also read The Escape Room by Megan Golden, I believe her name was. I read that one in May, and it was part of a reading challenge, readathon that I was doing, about Escape the Room reading challenge thing that was really, really fun. And this is a locked room mystery, and they are locked in an elevator, actually, so it's very close quarters. So every chapter you are getting the backstory of how these people ended up in this elevator, and then the other chapters you're getting them in the elevator, and it was very intense, and the ending was just wild and crazy, and the emotions and the intensity, I really felt it in this story, and I thought it was really good and well done, and I liked all the background story that we got. It didn't feel like too much. Usually when there's two timelines going on, you kind of like one more than the other, but I thought it was really well balanced, and all the back stuff gave us all the information we needed for what was happening and the intensity inside of the elevator. So I thought it was really well done, and I definitely want to read more Megan Golden in the future. Okay, I had to pause for a minute, so let's see where I was. So the lighting might be a little bit crazy again because there's not a lot of daylight left, and it's already, I don't know what time it is, almost 4 o'clock, so sun is like pretty much set. So what else did I read this year for Literally Dead Book Clubs? I read The Writing Retreat and The Last Word. The Writing Retreat was Julie Bartz, and The Last Word is Taylor Adams, and those were both wild, crazy times. I know they were favorites for a lot of people, and I had a lot of fun reading those ones, and they got a little wild. The Writing Retreat had some awkward, uncomfortable, sexual scenes in it that the main character was kind of like reliving and working through. I don't really know what that was about. It was kind of weird and uncomfortable, but they definitely went in directions, like the Writing Retreat definitely went in a lot of different directions and was just wild and insane. It is about this famous writer. I don't think she publishes a lot of books anymore, but she has this place that they do writing retreats out of, and only so many people get picked, like 5 or 6 women get picked every year, and they get locked in this mansion place out like in the middle of nowhere, and they have, I think, like 4 weeks to write a book, and it has to be like from scratch. They have to write X number of words a day, and there's like all these crazy rules about it. It's a competition, and it sounds really exciting, but the person who runs it, who hosts it, who is giving the grant, basically whoever writes the best book, she's going to publish it for them, kind of thing, or like have her publishing team do it or whatever, right? And she is a little off her rocker, and there's some very questionable things going on in this house and with the host. And our main character is kind of had a friendship breakup happen at the beginning of this book, and they both end up getting selected to be in this year's competition and are going to be locked up in this house together for like the next 4 weeks. And it just gets wild. And the last word is this girl. She is in a cabin for whatever reason, like a beach house or something, and she is running away from her life, a tragic accident thing that had happened, and running away from her ex-husband. I don't know if it's her ex-husband, but she's separated from him, and she's in this place and reading all these books and having like a discussion with the neighbor across the street through the window with like a whiteboard kind of thing, and he says, read this book. The book starts with her finishing reading this book and giving it a 1-star review and being like, this was terrible, what a horrible book, this person does not know what they're talking about. And the author seeing this review and going on there and commenting and being like, you just don't know good books, this is harmful to me as an independent writer, you need to take down this review. And she's like, no, I stand by it. And the author kind of keeps pushing and is really like in her face about it and is like, you need to remove this review, this is not good for me. And she's like, well, too bad. And he ends up like stalking her in real life, and things get very, very intense. And at the very end, it's like any Taylor Adams with No Exit and Hairpin Bridge, I also read earlier this year, and everything, like, it just gets really, really intense and crazy at the end. Like The Last Word, The Writing Retreat. There's a lot of these books where everything just goes like absolutely crazy at the end. And yeah, she's like fighting for her life and trying to get the neighbor to come over and help her, and she has a dog, and there's a lot going on. And yeah, just her just trying to fight for her life and just how crazy and wild it gets. So if you like a wild, twisted thriller, this is definitely one I would recommend. And if you like No Exit, a lot of people who like No Exit like The Last Word, and a lot of people did not like Hairpin Bridge. I read it this year in July, and I enjoyed Hairpin Bridge enough. I would say The Last Word is better than Hairpin Bridge, though. But if you like Taylor Adams, you'd probably like The Last Word. And then I have 2 romance books on here that I just absolutely loved and adored. That was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. That was last year's Emily Henry that came out, but I sadly did not get to it until this year. I just loved it. I love Emily Henry's romances because it's not just 100% romance. There's other things that the characters, like flaws within themselves that they are dealing with, and familial relationship things that they are working through in their life. And yeah, it's just, I love seeing that growth happen in these stories. I really enjoy the romance book clubs for the same reason. There's something personal going on that they are working through in the midst of getting together with somebody romantically. So I really enjoyed that. Yeah, so Book Lovers, just absolutely loved it. I also read Happy Place in September, and it was okay. I enjoyed it, but Book Lovers was above that. A lot of people think that Happy Place is probably one of Emily Henry's least favorite books. It's not reaching my best books of the year, but Book Lovers, I really enjoyed their dynamics. They are in this tiny little town. The main character is a literary agent, and one of her authors has this best-selling book based in this tiny little town, and her sister takes her there to do a little vacation end of year. She's pregnant with her 3rd child, I think, the sister, and she's like, I just need a little break from my husband and my kids and want some sister time together. And her rival in the bookish industry, he is an editor. He happens to be living in this little town at this time, and of course they butt heads, they clash, but there's a lot more underneath the surface there, of course, about why they butted heads 2 years previously, and their relationship and working through their own personal things that I really, really, really enjoyed. And I talk about this in my summer reads wrap-up that I did. And the other one I read was Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren, and I just adored this book. I just loved it so much. I loved the relationship between the 2 characters. There is one uncomfortable sex scene in this, and it is uncomfortable because it is their first time ever having sex ever, and they're teenagers when it happens, and it is descriptive. I think they described it in a way it's not too steamy in the sense of this is meant to be YA, and it's written, the sex scene is very adult. It's not like that. It is very reminiscent of what it would be like at that age, at that time, in that situation. It was just a little uncomfortable as an adult reading it, and I think that could have been a closed door scene for sure. It is not YA in the sense that in our current timeline they are adults, the main characters, and the flashbacks are when they are younger, teens up until 18, and then this is 10 years later. They had a falling out at 18. That's the mystery. You don't know why they had this falling out, and our main character just ran away. I'm trying to remember her name, and he's trying to figure out why did you just abandon me? You just stopped talking to me. I don't know what happened. And that's the mystery there. And when they run into each other in the present day, when they run into each other, his name is Elliot and her name is Macy, I believe. When they run into each other, they're both dating other people, but Elliot is very much you are the love of my life, and I run into you and I'm just breaking up with my girlfriend. You're the one I'm meant to be with. And she's like, I don't know about that. Are we really meant to be together, kind of thing. You're really learning their relationship as teenagers and growing up, and the bond that they have and how they bond together, and then as adults coming back together and trying to figure out are we meant to be together or not, and what does my life look like now, and how do you fit into it. But I just adored it. They were just the sweetest couple ever, and yeah, I ship them and the couple Charlie and Nora, maybe, from Book Lovers. I also wanted to mention favorite books that were non-fiction this year that I read. No, I had a couple more books to mention that I really enjoyed. A couple of thrillers. So What Lies in the Wood by Kate Marshall, I believe. I read that one for the book troop. No, I did not read that one for the book troop. I wanted to read it, but didn't have a chance to get to it, so I wasn't going to get to it. And then our in-person book club picked that to read, so I was like, okay, fine, I'll get to it, even though I heard that it wasn't the best book ever. And I actually really enjoyed it. And Gabby did that for her book troop, and I went back and watched the live show later on, but it was a 5-star for her. So I'm like, oh, I'm glad that I read it and I liked it, and I didn't just hear the negative reviews for it. And it was really interesting, and it had a twist that I wasn't quite expecting it, because it is based off of a true story, but I did not know that. So if you know the true story behind it, you would understand the twist. Some people didn't like the fact that it wasn't acknowledged that it was based off of a true story, but I think it's not acknowledged because then that ruins the end, right? But it's this girl, she has been stabbed 17 times as a child, like 11 years old or something. Quite young. She gets stabbed 17 times and is left for dead, and her two friends witness this and run to the road because they're in the woods and get help for her, and a search party goes out looking for her, and this guy finds her and carries her back out and gets her to the hospital, and miraculously she is saved. It was like very close, like within inches of hitting like major arteries and stuff like that, right? And so now this is 10 years later kind of thing, and I can't remember why she's going back to this place. The guy that was convicted of this stabbing has died in jail. I think he had like cancer or something like that. It was like a natural death. And she is questioning, like, did we put away the wrong guy? Because she was very much like unconscious when she was found. She had been stabbed 17 times, traumatized. Did she get a good picture of who did it? Or did they just show her picture like, here's the bad guy? And she was like, yeah, that's him. Being so young and completely traumatized, did she identify the right person? That's like the whole mystery, is who really stabbed her? Did they put away the wrong guy? I liked it. I listened to it as an audiobook and I thought it was interesting enough, and it surprised me. I also read Pumpkin Spice Cafe, and that was just a fun little sweet I guess it would be a cozy mystery. It was pretty steamy in some scenes for sure. It is also for fans of Gilmore Girls, and the girl who writes it, her name is like Lori Graham or something she goes by, and that is just a pen name for this series, and it is very much Gilmore Girls fanfic kind of thing, and I just really enjoyed that one. It was cute and cozy. So we're going from like crazy stabbing 17 times to this cute cozy little Pumpkin Spice Cafe, but I enjoy those little stories as well. And I also wanted to mention Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I read this one for Blackoween and really enjoyed the story of this. It's a white guy and a black guy, and the book starts at their son's funeral, and their sons were married. And these two dads did not agree with their homosexual lifestyle, and now that their sons have been murdered, and they believe because they are homosexuals, they are out for revenge. What I really liked about this book was that it was really confronting a lot of their own internal biases and racism, just really hard, difficult conversations. I talk about this book a lot in my Blackoween vlog, so you can check that out to get all of my thoughts on it. But I, again, just really love books that tackle these really hard, difficult conversations and don't shy away from it. And they are both confronting their biases and stuff within themselves and having really hard conversations with each other as well. And I just really appreciated that and enjoyed that one. And then for the nonfiction books I read this year that really stuck out to me that were not memoirs, I have a different list of memoirs that I read. I read How to Pray. I can't remember the subtitle to that, but just an everyday guide for people of how to pray, and I can't even remember the guy's name, but I'll post a picture, of course. And I thought that one was really good. I did I think in 2020 a study on this book with the pastor and other people in the church, and thought it was a really good, just simple guideline and help you when you're stuck and not sure how to pray. And I really appreciated that one. I also read Everybody Fights by Kim and Penn Holderness. They do a lot of videos on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, things like that, and they are hilarious and I love them. And they wrote this marriage book, and I thought it was really awesome and filled with really great advice. A really good book for those who are married and have been married for a long time even, and also if you know somebody who's getting married, it would be a great gift for their wedding. It's Not Supposed to Be This Way by Lisa TerKeurst. She is one of my favorite nonfiction Christian writers, and this book was all about disappointment and dealing with disappointment, and I thought it was excellent. It came at a really good time in my life. I bought it a few years ago and just never got to it, and you know, people talk about sometimes you read a book at just the right time, and this was the right time for this book. And it just talks about dealing with really big disappointments in your life. As she was writing this book, her and her husband were separated because he had cheated on her, I believe, and she wasn't sure if they were going to be together or not. So she is dealing with some really real things. It's not just disappointed about, you know, something small like not getting her dream home or something like that. That feels very like white privilege type of thing. Like, she's going through some really, really, really hard things, and she does talk about that, like disappointments of not being able to become a mother for other people, not for her personally, or the loss of a child through like miscarriage or infant death or something. There are some really huge things in life, huge disappointments and setbacks and things like that. But even the small little things too can still trip us up and really bring us down, and we need to wrestle through that with God and our faith and everything like that. And this book was really excellent, and I love Lisa TerKeurst, and anything she writes is worth checking out for sure. And last but not least, I finally finished Hood Feminism by Mikki Kendall, and I have been reading this book since March. It's not because I don't love the book, it's not because I didn't like the things. It was a really hard read for me, not because it is tackling really hard issues. I didn't necessarily feel like attacked or anything like that for it. It was more like I needed to sit there with Wikipedia open and a dictionary, because she's talking about things that I don't know a lot about. So it was just a hard read. Like I said, mentally my brain is unable to like comprehend so much stuff right now, and just like the most basic of books is hard for me to digest and remember and absorb and even know what I'm reading. So a book so heavy in politics and social justice issues and feminism and really, really hard topics, it was hard for me to understand all of it. Also, she does talk about some celebrities and people in the media that have come up through different stories and stuff, and I didn't know who those people were, so I had to stop and like look up who those people were, and words that I don't use in my everyday language. It took a little bit more brain power to understand the book, but I highly recommend it. If you consider yourself a feminist in any way, shape, or form, I 100% think you should read this book. If you don't consider yourself a feminist, I 100% think you should read this book. It was a really good book, and I'm so glad I finally was able to finish it. Anyways, those are the best books I read this year. I have read 90 books this year so far. There is 9 days left of the year or whatever, so I'm not anticipating anything else knocking these books out. But I have had a decent reading year, and I hope next year I can just focus more on remembering what I'm reading and almost taking a more critical look at my reading in order to review those books and remember them and just have more comprehensive and cohesive thoughts about them. So yes, that is all for me from now. Let me know down below one of your top 2-3 books of the year were, and if you've done a video, let me know, of course, and I will talk to you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye!